are returning to our open session, and we are at item number 3. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
So move.
Saleh.
Second, Taylor.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. All right. We are going to transition now to our work session, and today is September 21st, 2021. And the first item is going to be the fiscal year 2023 budget goals and priorities. And I'm going to welcome our city manager, Jeff Ruin.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Like clockwork, it's budget season again, and this is the time of year where we like to just do a check-in with you. No formal presentation tonight, although we're happy to answer questions if you have any. We do like to check in with you just to see if there's any new budget priorities that you'd like us to consider as the staff begins to compile the FY23 budget. So just a quick reminder for you and the public, your staff is going to be working hard on budget compilation really from about this time all the way through December, at which time we'll deliver you a draft fiscal year 23 budget. Your review largely takes place in January and February because state law requires that the budget be approved in March. When we get to January and February, we can certainly make changes, although any significant changes to the budget become a little bit more difficult at that time as we've set tax rates and we've made other decisions that might have to be undone. So again, what we look for tonight is just any changes to your goals, any specific projects you want us to be reconsidering or taking a look at. So with that, I'll just turn it back over to you, Mayor. And again, if you have questions, we've got a number of staff here that can field those.
Great. Well, I know that we've all been through this process once before, where we just kind of talk about our priorities and some things that we want staff to consider. And so I'll just have people just put it out there.
I want to start. I just want to talk about affordable housing. I know that through the American Rescue, like money that's coming soon, Jeff recommended some kind of affordable housing. All of us agree that's something we have to do. But even before we knew that this is coming, we talked last time on the our master plan, that we added the word we need a solid plan for affordable housing. And let us think about if this money never came. Or since we said this is one of the goals that we want to achieve next time, I think it is fair to think about allocation of some of the budget to be in the US for affordable housing plan. I'm just saying that because we talked about it, and we need to really be a little aggressive. I've been in this council for 4 years. This is my last year. And since I joined, I was saying affordable housing, and everybody agree. I don't think nobody in this council member, they really don't agree about there is affordable housing crisis, and we need to work and add to what the city has been doing regarding affordable housing. If we can add more work, so we can have really a solid plan for affordable housing for Iowa City. At this moment, I've been experiencing a lot of experience. I've been seeing people who get Section 8 voucher from my community or the people that I serve at the Center for Worker Justice. They will be very excited that finally, they've been in the waiting list for almost 3 years. Finally, they get voucher, but they cannot find a house that comparing to the market price with the same thing. If they are lucky, they will find housing fellowship, which is being playing really great part of providing houses that will be covered by Section 8 easy, and because they are in lower price. But take Section 8 and go everywhere. That's why people moving out. I know, like my cousin, she couldn't find anything in Iowa City. She have to move out to Coralville because Coralville, market price is less than Iowa City. So this is, we are forcing people out of our community because the market price of housing here is really high. So the city have to do something. We need our population to grow because that's good for us. And as a city, so we have more property tax and everything. I just hope, this council can try to start something about this. I'm not gonna be with you all, but please think about this. People being waiting for a long time to see the city is doing this. Thank you.
I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Salih. It has been an issue for a long time that we've been talking about, and I know the South District home ownership program was an excellent start as far as getting lower income folks into housing, but that is for home ownership, and I think what she's referring to is also for the rental properties. And what we've heard is that it's too expensive for the developers to build new multi-family units, but perhaps we as a city need to be a little stronger in our discussions with developers and encourage them, even help them find properties that they could redevelop as more affordable units for these folks that need this housing. I also have talked quite a lot about childcare, and I still feel really strongly that the city needs to look at that, and I know we've talked about it. We've talked about a brick and mortar option as far as a building and purchasing a building, or even co-purchasing it with the county, and I would hope that we continue to have that as a priority, because that's what holds a lot of people back in jobs, because they don't have childcare. We've heard that a lot. So I think having a brick and mortar facility, as well as an education and training program for providers. And I think that'd be really important and something we should do.
I mean, I think I agree with both priorities. I do think that with respect to childcare, aside from or in addition to a brick and mortar, one of the most important things we can do is help people get the training and the certification to open up home daycares in their own homes. That is proven. One of the things that certainly I've seen personally throughout the pandemic is that having smaller units, so that you have sort of pods of people, and there's not such there's a much smaller chance of people being infected or so forth, can really be valuable. So that as opposed to a large one, so that you can have them in neighborhoods, in people's homes, in the community. Those can be both really successful and a really important income stream for whoever runs that childcare with, because one person can have, depending if they don't take babies, they can have up to 5 or 6 kids in their home. Mm-hmm. And you get a number of those, and that can make a big difference. With respect to affordable housing, the thing that I would like to put on the table is something that I've heard about, but I don't know the extent that we've done it, and that's land banking. Because land is land is expensive. It's a really important part of an integral part of the cost of putting up if you're going to do new construction, and so I mean, I don't know, Jeff, where we stand on that, but it seems to me that land banking could be a really integral part of that.
Mm-hmm. I can respond to that real quick. We have bought one piece of property for land banking. It's a lot on the east side of town that would accommodate 6 townhomes. We've made offers on other lots, but have not found our way to closure. We do have, I'd say we're working towards a significant accumulation of fee and lieu dollars in the Riverfront Crossings District, to the point where we're starting to have some preliminary staff conversations about possible interest in purchasing property down there, or partnering with some future development that may occur in that area. And then again, outside of the riverfront crossings where those, because as a reminder, the fee in lieu that are generated from riverfront crossings must stay in that district. Outside of that area, we still have a few $100,000s in our land bank account, and we selectively look for property that we can purchase. But outside of the 6 townhomes, we have not closed on anything yet.
I think we have done really a lot of good things when I just hear about, for example, the next building that we have on Harbor Hoover. There is apartment that is really affordable because the city is also like help on making those certain apartment on that building to be affordable. For example, the other one that we have in River Crossing that being managed by the Housing Fellowship is very nice building and also have some affordable housing at the 30%, 50%, 4% way is really good. I think the Peninsula on the 4th Road, we have some apartment there that people can really live for. Those kind of things if we become just a little aggressive with those kind of things that we already been doing it and it have good result, will be great. Just one of the idea. I'm not experiencing affordable housing, but I know in this city there is a lot of people who have experience and they can bring it to the table, to the city. So something like this.
Well, we do have I certainly agree with the affordable housing emphasis. We will have the committee coming out with its report sometime later this year, correct, Jeff?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing what their recommendations may be. I would want to emphasize, in looking at the strategic plan, it talks about fostering healthy neighborhoods and affordable housing throughout the city. I really do feel that the throughout the city needs to be emphasized, that we need to integrate affordable housing into our community. And the strategies may vary depending upon the context. So in terms of the budget, some of these strategies, and I've had discussions with the city manager and others, that they may require kind of testing the concept. It may not be something that we roll out in the same way that we rolled out or will roll out, I'm assuming, the South District, that it would be the variables may be such, the challenges may be such that we need to test the idea on a much smaller scale to understand how we can do it well. There may be financial aspects to some of these strategies. I've become aware of the fact that many cities have enacted zoning changes, for example, Minneapolis, allowing duplexes and I believe triplexes on all single-family lots in the city, but they're running into financial problems. You can change the zoning code, but if there are barriers to implementing the change, it doesn't get you anywhere. So it may not just be simply changes to the regulatory framework. It may also be looking at the financial aspects of the strategies that we develop. But I do, again, want to emphasize how can we do this throughout the city? And Janice, I thought your comment on the daycare was interesting in that way too. If we try to integrate the daycare into households, I personally experienced that when I was in graduate school in Madison, where we had my wife at the time had a small daycare operation built into our apartment. So that sort of distributive approach may reduce the cost because you bypass the brick and mortar aspect of it, but you still have the regulatory factors to consider. Some of the other things that I've been thinking about would be, in looking at our strategic plan, enhancing community mobility for all residents. I've been speaking about barriers to access in wintertime with the corner curb ramps during, that are the result of our plowing operations. That may have a budgetary consequence. So, yeah, we're looking at transit, that's good. Pedestrian and bicycle networks, I think, are also important. So at a minimum, these barriers to access as relates to walking, and then with our bike system, my observation has been that we're making great strides in our trail system, but less strides in our on-street bike lane system. And that's a system that I think benefits ridership where biking is used for commuting purposes, not just recreational purposes. I mean, it has crossover into recreational use, but I think it might help us with regard to improving mobility where biking becomes an alternative to driving. So it sort of ties into our need to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. And my sense is that our bike lanes, at least on certain streets, do not feel safe and comfortable. We do not yet have the protected bike lane as a type. And I am seeing it. I saw it just the other day in Cedar Rapids in their downtown area. Very, very set aside bike lane, very clear that it was distinct from and not adjacent to the vehicle lane. So improving the bicycle network, I think, is something that I hope we can advance. I feel we're falling behind in terms of our on-street system. And the memo talks also about concerns regarding development and the fact that growth has slowed, at least with respect to some of our previous years. And we mentioned in our strategic plan the idea of trying to measure and understand the cost of development as it relates to the cost of the infrastructure that's required to service that development. So it seems to me a very critical time to really begin to evaluate how we grow, and that not all growth is equal in that regard. So how do we grow in a way which will be not a liability over the long term? I mean, the city is in the game for the long term. We're in the long game. Yes, we need to have revenues generated in the short term, but we don't want to see development that is a revenue generator in the short term become a liability in the long term. So that's something that I think, as a council and certainly as a community, need to better understand. And there are ways in which that analysis can be done, and done in a way that's depicted graphically in a very compelling way, so that we're all on the same page in terms of understanding, what ways, in the ways we develop, some of those ways we develop may end up requiring subsidy over the long term. And so that in itself takes away from our ability to fund the kinds of things I think all of us are talking about tonight. So we at a minimum need to understand that certain types of development may in the long term result in a subsidy in order to make them function properly. So I think this is an opportune time to take up that conversation. It's on our strategic plan. We're kind of reaching the end of that 2-year period. And I understand that we've run into buzzsaws over the last 2 years in terms of being able to look at all the issues that were raised 2 years ago. But I do think at this point in time, it's really critical that we have an idea of what type of development generates long-term wealth, and integrate that into our development policy. My inclination is to think that type of development will also address climate change. It will address equity. It will address the environment. It will further us on other fronts as well if we take a critical look at our development model. So that may require funding as well to to do that kind of analysis.
I appreciate all the discussion that's focusing on our strategic plan priorities, because I think that's really remarkable when we think about we were sitting in March of 2020 coming up with those priorities. And then if we look where we are now, I think we still have those solidly in focus. I think they're still very good in spite of all of the emergencies that we've been dealing with since March of 2020. So we're talking about the budget that will be expenditures beginning July 1st, 2022. Hopefully by then, we'll be out of the emergency response phase with COVID, hopefully. And I think this year, I hope that we look at it as kind of a special year because of the American Rescue Plan infusion. The strategic investment projects that we all looked at and I think had consensus around at our last work session in relating to the ARPA funding really mesh well with our strategic plan priorities that we came up with in March of 2020. So I agree with the focus on those, and I think that yes, affordable housing, yes, climate resiliency, yes, inclusive neighborhoods. I appreciated, workforce development, childcare, mental health support, and all of that to me really ties into also our commitments from one summer ago relating to the Black Lives Matter movement. We said at the time that that was just the beginning of our anti-racism work as a council in this community, and I think it's important that we continue to invest in that. Not just the remainder or the $1 million that we allocated at the time, but really putting that focus on all of our departments, all of our other strategic plan priorities and strategic investment projects, I think can benefit from an anti-racist focus. So specifically relating to what we discussed a year ago and how we're carrying forward to this budget that would be starting next July. We did also commit to our preliminary plan to restructure the police department, and I just want to focus on that spectrum of response, that continuum of response, and the prevention and diversion from the sort of immediate police contact and prevention and diversion from the criminal justice system. I think we have a great opportunity to invest in that end of the spectrum with things like mobile crisis response, 911 integration, or 988 if that's the timing of that. And just really thinking about community safety, because all of these strategic plan priorities, affordable housing, climate action, inclusive neighborhoods, a resilient economy, all of those things improve the safety of our community. And I think we need to go a little bit further in being intentional with looking at things like violence interruption and how we might support that in our communities. And also remembering that workforce development, that our recreation programs, that our library programming, the programming that happens here, all of those things contribute to safety in our community. And I remember 2 years ago, it was like radical when we were talking about investing in some of these social supports like as infrastructure, right? But I think if we listen to this conversation here, we're solidly there, and we're allowed to be there, we're able to be there because we've got that strong fiscal responsibility that we've carried on for so long. And I think with the infusion of federal money at this time, that's an even better opportunity. I agree with you, John, on the concern of where's development going to be? What does that mean in terms of the tax base in addition to the cliff that we're facing with the 2013 tax reform and then the 2021 additional reforms? But I think we really look at the timing of now and using the ARPA funding to really juice those strategic plan priorities, and it's an exciting place to be.
I would agree. It's an exciting place to be because there's a lot of opportunities that we can do in this next budget process. I'm happy you all brought us back to the strategic plan because there's actually 6 items that I have identified, and they really do fall under the strategic plan, and the majority of mine fall under the last one that we actually discussed, which was promote an inclusive and resilient economy throughout Iowa City. And I'll just kind of point them out because we have a little time, right? And also, USG, please engage in this conversation, especially from a student perspective. When we talk about childcare, I think nights and weekends, I would love to see opportunities for people, because working individuals' jobs come 24/7, 7 days a week. Affordable housing, I think there's a lot to be said. A part of what we say in our strategic plan is that partnership. I think partnerships are critically important. We have some affordable housing advocates that are, they know this work like the back of their hand. And so I believe we should rely on them to really help us through this process. One challenge that I have found throughout this pandemic that is very apparent is, where do you go for help? All the different types of help that you need. I'm not exactly sure if I am promoting that the city be one-door entry, or try to figure out the best ways for one-door entry, for just a hub that people come, because there's so many things out there. And even when people come to me, I have to try to figure out what's the best avenue to, advise them to go and receive whatever type of assistance that they need. So one-door entry, and that can be for a variety of things, for accessing city government type opportunities, or even trying to find out what are some of the benevolence type activities within our community. The other thing that is here and is very clear in our strategic plan, and it says encourage healthy, diverse, and sustainable economic activity throughout the city, including taking steps to invigorate neighborhood commercial districts and create new small neighborhood commercial nodes. I have to tell you that I absolutely love what was created over on the north side, the outside seating. That's really neat. I think that in our community, we can look at more opportunities to just create a space that is vibrant for people to come. I was at the Iowa League of Cities, and the number one thing that people want to, when they visit a city or live in a city, vibrancy. And so I think we do have there's a lot of vibrancy in our community. I also believe that those partnerships with some of our minorities need to also be relooked at, just to make sure that we're not only inviting them to the table to be a part of something in the community, but also making sure that we provide some funding to support their efforts. I so love and appreciate that we have the social justice and equity. Wait a minute, what is it? The social justice and equity grant that we give, I think right now is at $75,000. We have talked about increasing that. I still think we should increase that, but there are other ways to many of those applications come from organizations, big organizations that have some phenomenal things that they do. But throughout the city, throughout the year, there could be a group that want to put on something like we had this past September 11th, where there was a great event that happened. And so as things come along, if there are some funds that the city can have for some opportunities from people who are just now breaking through to ask for city money and to engage in the city, I think that'd be great, that we have something kind of just lined up. The other thing is climate action. We can't forget about climate action, so I'm just going to leave it there because we need to be aggressive. The last thing I'll mention before I give up the mic is going to be economic development. I think Wendy Ford and all of our staff, they do phenomenal work. They really do. I believe that we need someone dedicated to, and whether this is through partnerships or someone dedicated on the city staff to kind of look for greater opportunities for state, federal funds, IFA funds that can really help a large arrangement of our community. Everybody in our community really is not just focused on one group or whomever, but if we can have someone just do a little more intentional work, the business owners, the microloan, especially for minority individuals, I think that's great. But I also believe that there are some more monies and some more grants out there that people can benefit from. And if we can just have a dedicated staff, that would be great.
I know we're running short on time.
Can I?
Yeah.
I haven't had an opportunity as counsel. Excuse me. If you bear with me just a minute, this is the end of 12 years, my last opportunity to do this. And having done this this many years, I think I want to give staff a whole lot of credit. Jeff's been here for 5 years as city manager, and I don't remember how many before that as assistant city manager, 4 or 5. And we just got a good history in the finance department and the city manager's office of really making sure that we are as efficient with our money, I think, as possible, and certainly following council direction as to how we spend that. And when I've sat here and listened to all of my fellow council members, I would say there's not a single thing that I disagree with. Okay, I think these are all really important things. When we go back to affordable housing, just as a reminder, we had a really, really good 15-point affordable housing program. We got through it, and we need to get a new one, and we're going to get a new one. And we made a lot of progress with that first one, and we need to keep making that progress. Maz mentioned out on Herbert Hoover, those are, if you're referring to one, I think it's LIHTC dollars. And so the idea that we are as supportive and helpful as possible with developers who know how to and want to go after those LIHTC dollars and go through, the state and federal requirements of those monies, that's really important because that leverages our dollars big time. We get a lot more out of our city dollars if we can leverage those state and federal dollars. So to get those LIHTC projects. Similarly, Housing Fellowship does an awesome job, as was mentioned. The other comment was, we need to continue growing. I don't know if this option is even still on the table, but I would encourage the council to really work with the city manager's office and see if there's any chance of getting the Carson Farm annexation back on the table. I mean, at that point in time, we have lost 200 acres of possible developable land with a minimum of 10% of the housing units on that being affordable housing under an ordinance that we currently have in place. I feel really strongly that we lost a great opportunity because the goal was to make it greater or perfect. And we don't always get greater, we don't always get perfect, but that was an opportunity for city parks, maybe a school, fire station, and again, a minimum of 10% of those housing units. And at least at that time, the developer was talking about not wanting all single-family homes. We don't want all single-family homes. We want the missing middle that John has introduced to us over the years. We want those opportunities. But we don't have much land left in the boundaries of the city of Iowa City. So we're going to have to look to those opportunities, and some may be pretty big and bold, and we need to realize that we're not going to always get exactly what we want. Those developers need to have that opportunity to make money. They're taking huge risks, but we could get some really, really good things. I think the continued focus on our existing strategic plan, as at least a couple of you said, that those things are still really relevant because we, to a certain extent, have gotten sidetracked on some of those in the last year and a half because of the other things that we have had to really focus on with Black Lives Matter and with COVID. I think the ARPA money does give us that opportunity to do some pretty unique things, and as we all did agree on those, strategic investment funding opportunities, I think not only do we have that opportunity to give money directly to people, but we have the opportunity to invest in those things that when we look back 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, will have made a significant difference in this community. I think between Laura and Bruce, I think you made a lot of great comments on how, and tying together so much of this in how, if we do it right, we have the opportunity to promote growth. We have that opportunity to promote diversity. And Laura, I think you said it so well of how many of these things can really tie together in making a safer community, which come back to a lot of the things that we were talking about in the summer of 2020. Of, how do we reimagine the interaction of our police department with the residents of our community? How do we make it just a much more pleasant, comfortable, safe society here for everybody? So I would really just echo a lot of what my fellow counselors have said tonight, and just wish, the staff and the next council best of luck in putting all this together.
Thank you. I'm going to ask that council if we can allow USG to speak up to 3 minutes, and then we will adjourn at that time.
I won't take 3 minutes. We actually met with university leadership yesterday to talk about the university strategic plan, so I was able to bring a lot of feedback from other executives into this, which was really helpful. Definitely affordable housing, working with the university. They're also coming up with a lot of ideas for this, so just subsidies, vouchers for students, less luxury apartments in general. We want to see landlords being held accountable, especially for those places that don't have recycling, like using resources to send people there and make sure that those are set up. You guys talked a lot about your public transportation plans over the past couple months, and we'd like to see free fare for students. And then just in general, a lower police budget. Students showed in the Reimagine Campus Safety Report that they just want reduced police presence in general in the community. So, thank you.
If you can give me just half minute, I just want to ask Jeff for the housing committee that we have, and you said there is a report going to come soon, toward the end of the year. Do we have a student representative on that committee?
No, there's not a student representative. I think Tracy Heitschu and her staff have done some outreach. I don't know if they've reached out to you all for some conversations, but I think there's been some efforts to do some outreach, and that's ongoing.
I think it's a good idea, one representative, at least from the university, so they can, since they are working on this kind of affordable house, if we can bring...
Yep, this Thursday we actually have a meeting with Vaughn, who's in charge of housing and dining at the university, and Tracy will be there, and we're trying to get somebody from the tenants union to have a conversation about affordable housing. So.
Awesome.
Great, thanks.
Great.
Can you throw in trying to figure out how to get rid of homeless week into that conversation?
Yes, that
We'll
was
try.
brought up during our strategic planning as well yesterday.
Oh, yes.
Right.
All right, thank you all, council. Thank you, USG, and thanks to everybody for attending. We are going to adjourn. We will be back at 6 p.m. for our formal meeting. See you soon.